Hello, friends, and welcome to our SBT Sunday teachings. My name is Venerable Tarpa. I am so excited and thrilled to be here. Today's topic is going to be recognizing samsara. I thought that this would be a fascinating topic to explore. So, everyone here, I think, has a basic idea of what samsara is. And I'm going to explain it and define it further. But let's start with this idea that understanding and clarity are spectrums. We can have various levels of understanding, and we can have various levels of clarity. So we can understand a point. We can understand something like the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, basically, have an understanding. Okay, I went to a class, I kind of get it. But then years later, we can have a bit of an epiphany and say, oh, that's what they meant by that. Maybe years after that, we say, oh, now I really get it. I didn't realize the profundity of that. And the same thing is with clarity, right? We can have an idea of what we're doing, but then we can sit down and write it all out and get a much deeper understanding, a clarity into the understanding. And so both are spectrums. And the hope is today that I'm going to work with this. So I understand that you all have a basic idea of samsara, but that's not good enough. If we're trying to escape samsara, be liberated from samsara, we have to have such a visceral clarity and understanding of it in order to do so. And when we talk about escaping samsara, the word escaping is interesting. My name is Tarpa, right? Tenzin Tarpa. Tarpa, often translated as liberation, is actually the translation of escape, to escape samsara. And that's how it's put in Buddhist terms, right? And so first of all, let's define what samsara is. So traditionally, Buddhism would define samsara as to be trapped in cyclic existence. Cyclic existence means to be trapped in the cycle of rebirth. To be born, live, die, suffer the whole time, of course, and then die and then reborn again, moving through different levels of existence and rebirth. So that's the traditional view of it. Now, within that traditional view, there's kind of two viewpoints. Some schools of thought see samsara as the cyclic existence of rebirth itself, right? The manifestation of that, the cycle of rebirth, where other schools of thought see samsara as the mental state, which is the cause of samsara. I'm in the later camp. I believe that samsara is a mental state, which is the cause for being trapped in rebirth. The Dalai Lama is another who in various teachings said that he believes the same. Now, as a secular group, we don't teach belief. We leave that to the individual where it belongs. Believing means that we don't know, right? We might have some evidence or some thoughts either way, but belief means we don't know. So it's a personal thing. Here in SBT, we teach what we know. So some of our members hold a belief in rebirth. Other members of our group do not, and we're cool with that. Again, belief is up to you. So what I shared with you so far was the very traditional version of it, right? The Buddha believed in rebirth. There's no denying this, right? Now, whether he was right or not, that's up to you to decide. But in the sutras, the Buddha talks about rebirth endlessly. It's in all of the sutras everywhere. The Buddha says to Ananda, this will be my last becoming. I will not be reborn after this life. So clearly the Buddha had a belief in rebirth, but we don't necessarily have to. We have to analyze this for ourselves. Okay. So myself, I hold that belief that samsara is the mental state, which is the cause of this. Now, that works well in a secular presentation because we could say that samsara is the mental state which keeps us bound to suffering, regardless of what happens when we die, right? Because if we don't have proof either way, it makes it kind of irrelevant. In secular Buddhism, what's relevant is how things will apply to our lives here. Now, the good news is, whether you believe in rebirth or not, what we do to make our lives flourish and beneficial to others in this life would naturally help us to have a good rebirth in the next. So it's a win-win either way. Okay, so one thing that both traditional Buddhism and secular Buddhism agree upon is the origin of suffering. Origin of samsara. Samsara is a deep-rooted ignorance about the true nature of ourselves in reality. Traditional Buddhism asserts that, as well as other schools, Mahayana and secular Buddhism. Samsara it arises from, it's caused by a deep-rooted ignorance of the true nature of ourselves in reality. Ignorance defined as not knowing, knowing the wrong thing, or not wanting to know. I'm always puzzled. That's a really interesting one, right? Not wanting to know. In SBT, I like to define samsara in more secular terms, trying to get around the word. Oftentimes I'll say habitual mundane existence. Habitual mundane existence. So habitual meaning that we tend to live our lives in habits and patterns. In a sense, we live our lives in samsara. We live our lives on autopilot, right? Following social conditioning, following habits and patterns that we pick up from our families, our parents, our siblings, patterns that we pick up on television. I don't think people realize some of the impact of media. And one of the impacts that I think is really always worth talking about is that media is dramatized in order to make it more exciting and interesting for the viewer. But what happens when you watch hours and hours of media? What happens is you start mimicking the behavior, right? So on television, when you see somebody react to something, the brain naturally perceives that's the way human beings respond. And so our behavior naturally begins to mimic media, just like our behavior mimics real world life, in which you mimic the behavior of your family, of your surroundings, of the people at work, of your friends and family, right? So this is clearly something we have to watch for, right? And as long as you realize that it's it exists in this way, you can be freed from it. But it does have a very powerful effect, right? This dramatization of everything. So that's the idea of habitual. Mundane existence means an existence that's unawakened, it's ignorant, it's dull, right? And the kind of thing where we wake up, go to work, come home, watch television, go to bed, do the whole thing again and again and again, right? So this is the idea of habitual mundane existence, and it really captures samsara quite well. These are the two main aspects of samsara itself. Okay, so that's kind of a description, definition according to sutras. But so that's a level of clarity and understanding, right? We all have that. But now I'd like to bring that to a deeper level of understanding. and talk about what does samsara look like in daily life, right? We talked about all those things, but what does that actually look like in our daily life, right? So again, samsara is an afflicted mental state, right? That's kind of what we're saying. Some would say it's an unhealthy mental state, but samsara is comprised of our mental afflictions and our emotional afflictions. Afflictions being problems, right? Afflictions are, in the Buddhist sense, are almost like illnesses, little illnesses that hold us back from our true nature. So if our true nature is healthy, then illnesses are afflictions, right? We would never say a cold or the flu is part of somebody's true nature, right? They're afflictions. In the same way, we see a lot of these negative aspects, characteristics of human beings, afflictions being anger and hatred and things like that. We see those in the same way as almost like illnesses, right? That's why we use the word afflictions, not normal, not natural aspects of our true nature, right? So we have this mental and emotional afflictions are part of samsara every day, right? When you're out and about. How about uncontrolled habits and reactivity or reactive patterns? Ignorance is clearly an aspect of samsara, right? Ignorance or confusion, right? Illusion. Selfishness. It's a huge aspect of samsara. How about immaturity, fear, worry, anxiety, arrogance, vanity, narcissistic or self-absorbed existence? This is the face of samsara. So I like to say that what samsara is, it's our psychological baggage, right? That term baggage is very popular, emotional baggage, right? It's all the mental garbage or drama that we hang on to that colors and influences our day, right? Rarely can we just go about our day in a simple way, existing, being happy that we're here. There's always all this drama going on, isn't there? You're out shopping and you're thinking about that person at work or what your sister said last night to you, or we're inundated by all of this psychological and mental drama and just baggage, right? And what would it be to just set down all that baggage, right? Ultimately, samsara is unawakened existence, living our lives on autopilot, not really aware of our lives, of the truth of our lives, of how to live life. Again, we're talking about different levels of understanding and different levels of clarity. Yes, we understand life basically, don't we? We know how to wake up and brush our teeth. We know how to go to work. We know how to balance our checkbooks. We know basically how to talk to the kids. We know basically our responsibilities. But what level of understanding are we talking about? And what level of clarity? This is what Buddhism is all about. Buddhism is about reaching these amazing levels of understanding and clarity of our lives. We have that big term, understanding our true nature and the true nature of reality. What they really mean by that is having a very clear understanding of who we are, what we are, how to relate to others, how to exist productively in our environments, what exactly reality is, basically how to flourish in life, right? That's Buddhism, how to flourish in this life. So that's an idea of what samsara looks like in daily life. It's all the stuff we don't like about ourselves, isn't it? It's all the stuff that we know we should change about ourselves, right? We all have all those things that, oh, I should probably try not to talk so much at parties, or I should try to be more honest, or I should try to do this. Samsara is all that stuff that we have trouble with, right? It's all that mental baggage and drama that we can't let go of. It's remembering Susie Tompkins in the ninth grade who rejected you when you asked her out to the prom. And you never quite been able to let that one go, right? Or that kid who said something mean to you at a certain time, or the boss in your first job who was insulting. We just hang on to this drama our whole lives, right? This is a huge amount of samsara, right? But samsara is also the lack of, we talk about it being ignorance, it's also the lack of clarity, right? It's chaos, it's confusion. So I like to talk about the Buddhist path. We talk about samsara and nirvana. Just as easily, we could translate that into English as confusion and clarity, because they're exactly the same thing, right? And evolutionary, isn't it the same thing for human beings, right? Think about the confusion, ignorance, unknowing that we experience as human beings early on in our existence, right? From cavemen or primitive humans, we knew very little about the world. We existed in a lot of confusion. And now we keep evolving into greater and greater levels of understanding and clarity. So Buddhism is exactly the same. So we have samsara, which is basically just is the lack of clarity and chaotic, confused existence, and we have nirvana, enlightenment or awakening, which is possesses an incredible clarity into understanding our lives. And what happens when we understand things? We function better. It's simple, right? There's no mystery there. If you think about it, most of our lives are comprised of one thing: choices, right? Not just our own, right? We have our own choices, which is a big part of life, but also the choices our parents made for us, people are making for us now, choices that the workplace makes for us, choices that society makes for us. But choices. Choices in some ways are the cause to all the condition of our lives in their present state. And what what is the most contingent factor when it comes to causes, right? What's the most important cause in choices? And it's clarity, isn't it? When we understand the parameters, when we're clear about things, clear about our choices or decision, but also clear about the effects we want, clear about exactly what do we want from life, right? When we have that clarity, our choices become much, much clearer, and we become better, simply better at making choices. And when you're better at making choices, you end up with a better life. It's all so crystal clear, right? And when we're ignorant to the true nature of the way life works, our hands are tied. We just can't make good choices. So that's basically what we're doing. Okay, I'm hoping that that little talk gave you a much deeper understanding of what we're talking about with this funny word, samsara, right? You could just think, every time the word samsara comes up, just think of yourself as confusion. That's basically what it is. Okay, so what do you think? Do you understand what we're talking about now in samsara? Any questions about it? It's a fascinating topic. Yeah? You think you get it now? Mr. Nawang, please.
So I was thinking about when you were talking about media and how dominant it is in so many of our lives, and making the proper choices on how much time to spend on media, how much media to pick. And, we're faced with that choice all the time, but then we're also faced with, maybe not so clearly, big companies and very smart people that are trying to manipulate us to do more of that. And so we're kind of caught in that. And, it's one of those things where we, it's tempting at times to just completely cut our ties with it to avoid all that. But if we do, then we miss out on some important opportunities. So it's really a difficult area to manage.
Well said. Now let's bring some clarity into that. You're exactly right. But guess what? It's been happening from the very beginning. It looks different now because it's with social media nowadays. But guess what? In the old days, before all of this technology, it was still going on. We were being manipulated by people in the tribe, people in society. Kings and queens were feeding us wrong information, were manipulating us, were trying to get us to behave a certain way. And guess what? We were mimicking their behavior, and they were behaving in ways to, again, manipulate us. So the root of it is part of human nature. It's been going on forever. It's just now, being added to technology. I was trying to think of the word technolicized. I don't know, is there a better word than technolicized? He's making up his own words, folks. Now's the time to bail. But yeah, it's always been going on. And it's part of human nature, right? It's part of the mechanism of conformity, right? People want everybody to believe what they believe, and yeah, excellent point. So, what's all this stuff about samsara? Oh, David, please share.
I'm always looking for a kind of wee phrase that stays with me to illuminate things. And the one that really hit me here was samsara as mental garbage. I love that. I'll never forget that.
I was searching everywhere for a synonym for it because I thought it didn't sound really good. That's the way I kind of look at it. And I was looking for, and I couldn't find any better synonyms. And I thought, oh, I guess I thought it was too common. But it really is, isn't it? It's all that garbage and drama and all that stuff in our brains that doesn't serve much of a purpose.
Oh,
Dana,
thank you.
you're welcome.
This is a little bit different than, and some of the things that you're describing as samsara. But for me, maybe this is more subtler, or is that I notice, well, this is what mindfulness and meditation has helped me, is to become aware of some of these things that I'm thinking. And so then I have a choice, like you talked about. I have a choice. Before, I was on automatic pilot, and that's just what it was. But it's what I've realized is that I want something to be different. Boy, this coffee is too hot. This coffee just too cold. Uh, oh, it's snowing. Oh, oh, it's sunny. Oh, and so it's always not being content. It's always, it's not enough. It's not contentment, and so I'm discontent, and that feels like samsara.
Boy, you really hit it on the head, and thank you because you'd taken it to a deeper level that I should have covered. That when we talk about samsara, it is that existential discontent. It's that feeling of not feeling like you belong, not feeling like you have enough, not feeling like you are enough. All of that additional mental garbage. It's about self-doubt. It's about lack of self-value, right? Thank you, Dana. You're exactly right. As you can see, we can really go down the rabbit hole. So Dana helped us bring in another level of clarity, huh? You can see how clarity works. It just gets deeper and deeper. But just in so many ways, it's our, I want to stop there. We can't go too deep. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now, hey, Tarpa, what are we going to do about it? You're talking and talking. Yeah, we know life sucks. And you've made that perfectly clear. No, it doesn't. I'm just joking. But guess what? I'm not going to leave you out in the cold. I have something planned for you. I have a practice for everybody. A drum roll, please. So I thought about this, and I've been practicing it for some time. I find it very beneficial. And the practice is a noting practice. And, we've been practicing noting through our various programs and practices. Before I get to that, I'm skipping something. I wanted to talk about samsara here, but at the same time, to understand samsara, maybe we need to know just a little bit about awakening, right? The opposite. The Buddha was so clear about this. He says, what's awakening? Nirvana, enlightenment, whatever word you want to use. The Buddha said, oh, it's simple. It's the absence of samsara. And I think most people were pretty mad about that. The definition, hey, we really wanted something. What is that? It's a negation, right? But in a sense it is. It's like freedom. Freedom isn't something. Freedom is the absence of something. It's the absence of imprisonment, right? So in the same way, and more and more as I ponder that, it's the perfect definition. That's the goal. What is awakening? It's freeing ourselves, it's escaping from samsara. It's nirvana, awakening, enlightenment aren't places. Never, never, never. The Buddha never said that. And so in the same way, they're mental states, aren't they? Right? Just like samsara we talked about is a afflicted mental state. Awakening is a mental state free of afflictions to some degree, right? It's not afflicted or not afflicted. It's a huge spectrum, right? And as we practice, we free ourselves more and more from afflictions, and we experience those afflictions at a lower level than we do. Like anger, I can still get angry, but boy, my anger is nothing like it used to be. I freed myself to the intensity of samsaric anger, we might want to say. So where samsara is an ignorant and confused mental state, awakening is a mental state that is clear, understanding. Often they call it unmistaken. I don't think we should use that in an absolute way, kind of like more unmistaken. A mental state that clearly understands and experiences our true value, our true potential, and our true nature. So I didn't want to go too much into detail about awakening because that's a class on in itself. But I did want to share something. One of our dear Sangha members, Tenzin Wangmo, shared something the other day I thought was beautiful. And I thought, so in everyday life, here's a great way to think about spiritual awakening. One, an increased tendency to let things happen rather than make them happen. Frequent attacks of smiling. I get that one. Number 3, feelings of being connected with others in nature. 4, frequent overwhelming episodes of appreciation. 5, a tendency to think and act spontaneously rather than fear-based on past experience. Number 6, an unmistakable ability to enjoy each moment. Number 7, a loss of ability to worry. Number 8, a loss of interest in conflict. Number 9, a loss of interest in interpreting the actions of others. Number 10, a loss of interest in judging others. Number 11, a loss of interest in judging self. And number 12, gaining the ability to love without expecting anything. Sorry, I couldn't read that very well. My copy's a little blurry. Oh, wasn't that gorgeous? I'll post that for everybody after the class. I thought that was so great. Thank you, Tenzin Wamo. So that gives you a little bit of idea of what it is. And so we could say awakening is psychological well-being, a mind freed from afflictions, wisdom, understanding, selfless, maturity, a mind of maturity, a mind of mental and emotional stability, humility, a mind that's present in a state of clear and alert conscious awareness. Pretty cool. Okay, back to the practice. So we're going to be learning a practice of noting. And noting is just like it sounds. We just say, we note something or label something as it arises in order to kind of point it out and recognize it, to highlight it so we can work on it. So in this case, it's really easy. What I want you to do this week, and maybe longer than that, is I want you to start to observe and recognize samsaric qualities or characteristics as they arise and note them. It's that simple. So when something comes up like jealousy, you feel it and you note it, and you could just note it samsara, you know? Note them samsara instead of the actual terms about, because we're really trying to we're trying to highlight exactly which one of those is samsara. When anger arises, we recognize it and we note it, samsara, right? Whatever qualities arise, we note them samsara. Now, this isn't an original practice because in the Buddha's day, in the early sutras, the Buddha does it. Can you believe it? But the Buddha does it a little differently. The Buddha notes them all as Mara. And many of you might know what Mara is. Mara has been misunderstood, probably because of our Judeo-Christian upbringing, as kind of the Buddhist devil. But he's not really the devil. Mara isn't a deity. Mara represents the samsaric mind, right? So all the aspects of samsara that the Buddha experienced, he would say a line like, I see you, Mara, right? I see you, samsara. Because in some ways, doesn't our samsaric mind almost appear as it has a mind of its own, right? It's like that children's cartoon with an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder, right? Which is the Freudian idea of ego, right? You have the id of the devil, and you have the superego of the angel, with the ego being you in the middle. And we're always in this battle. We have these two voices in our heads that are telling us to do good or to do evil. So in a lot of ways, it makes sense that Mara, samsara, needed an archetype, right? But of course, those aren't different entities within us. So those are just different aspects of our mind. And but I think you all know that feeling that samsara, these samsaric qualities almost seem to have a mind of their own. When we're angry, that voice telling us what to do often is not giving us very good advice, is it? You should go punch that person right in the nose. And then the other voice says, no, let it pass. And that's why we have precepts, right, for us. So we all can listen to the right voice. But the Buddha noted this as Mara. I think it's more problematic to use an archetype. I think I could see that working for a lot of people, but I think ultimately it's more beneficial if we just note the characteristic itself. And when we're noting something samsara, we're really saying a samsaric aspect, samsaric characteristic, right? We're noting the quality, we're noting the characteristic, the affliction itself, right? So that sounds pretty straightforward, huh? Pretty easy to do. Everyone can do that. You do whenever you can remember to, but as things arise, you do that. Now, my question is, what kind of stuff are we going to be noting? Oh, Kat, you want to share?
That's exactly what I was going to say. What are we going to be noting? What, you mean,
Okay,
like
good. You're
anger
right on the
arising, or
point.
yeah,
Would you like to start?
something like anger arising
There's
or
one.
frustration.
Somebody.
Or,
Well,
yeah.
let's do them one at a time. Anybody else? What kind of things are we going to be noting as samsara? Imagine yourself going about your day, and I'll imagine something samsaric arising. What is it? A little participation to keep everybody on their toes. Yes, Tarshan.
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt. You don't have to raise your hands. You could just share.
Craving.
Say again.
Craving.
Craving. That's a great one.
Ben and Jerry.
Boredom.
What did you say?
Boredom.
Boredom. Why did you say boredom?
It's kind of a negative feeling, and you're like you and I talked about how, like, if you're bored, you're not
I was going to
creating.
save that for last. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I ruined it.
No, it's perfectly fine. I was wondering, wow, you're a really good student. You know why? Ultimately, all the samsaric things are things that don't possess right view, right? So think about right view when we think about awakening to our true value, true potential, and true understanding. When we have right view, right perspective, imagine, like, our practice of appreciation that we do, and you get to the point where you realize the perfection in the moment, that in this moment, chances are, unless we have a toothache or something, chances are there's no problems. Through appreciation, you can realize the perfection of every single moment, one by one, right? And you realize the miracle of your existence in every moment, right? The wonder of your existence at every single moment. That kind of right view, that's the awakened view. Everything that's not that, basically, are samsara. So that's discontentment, boredom, hatred, all of those qualities, right? Anything else? What other ones you got?
Laziness. And then the self-talk that comes when you realize you're being lazy.
That's a great one. How about selfishness?
Anxiety.
Share. Again?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Selfishness.
Gluttony.
Fear. Arrogance.
Jealousy.
Jealousy. Vanity. Being self-absorbed, right? And how about when we realize we're running on autopilot? How about just not being present? How about realizing when we're present and when we're not? Being present means that's an awakened mental state. Every time you realize you're not present, you're in samsara, aren't you? We think about samsara as being really nasty stuff, but it can be very subtle. Just not being present and running on autopilot is samsara. And somebody mentioned self-doubt, self-judgment. How about hopelessness and despair? Sometimes with despair, if we're grieving, there's good reasons to appropriately be in despair. But let's talk about the ones that aren't, that so oftentimes despair that doesn't seem to have much of a cause. Then there's clinical depression. We're not talking about that. Yeah. And simply the absence of right view. Okay. So does everybody understand what we're noting this week? Right? And the hope is you're going to find a whole bunch more. And I'd like you to post them on our Dharma chat on WhatsApp. When you come up with some interesting ones, Ms. Wamo, She's waving goodbye. I must be boring everybody. So as they arrive, if you come up with cool ones, post them on our chat group so we can all learn together. But how can you really escape samsara if you don't really know what it is? Right? The Buddha's Four Noble Truths are about one thing. It's about understanding exactly what samsara is so you can escape it. In his words, understanding the sickness so you can get better, right? That's what it is. So we're trying to get, you have to have a very, very deep understanding of what samsara is if you want to be truly successful at escaping from it, right? So that's the job in this week's practice, right? Labeling and noting samsara. Now, at the same time, if you wish to, you can also note awakened. You can look for qualities of awakened behavior. What qualities would those be? Generosity,
Compassion.
Presence.
wisdom,
Presence.
kindness, joy, love, happiness, selflessness, maturity,
Shining.
shining. I'm running out.
Contentment.
Contentment.
Wisdom.
Excellent.
And what
Spotting
would
Sahara.
we label those?
Awakened.
Okay.
So we use the word awakened as in awakened behavior, awakened characteristic. Just noticing you're present, you'd label that, you'd note that awakened. Every time you're practicing walking meditation, every time you come back to being present, you label it awakened. One thing you might start to notice that's quite interesting is that all the good qualities are present when you're in that awakened state. It's really hard to be afflicted when you're present. It's kind of neat. You start to really kind of catch on to it. You start to really gain the clarity of the power of presence. That when you're truly present, it's really hard for those afflictions to kind of sneak in and make us behave badly. Oh, are you guys excited? So let's talk about differences between nirvana and samsara. Oh, let's talk about this. So let alone are you going to note your own behaviors. If you want to, you can additionally note samsaric behaviors and characteristics in others. This is quite interesting. Not in a judgment way, not in a way of condemning others, but in a way of understanding samsara. And what happened, it has a remarkable effect. So say you're having a conversation with somebody and all of a sudden they go into some self-absorbed rant and just talking about themselves and themselves and themselves. You just label it samsara. But what happens is it brings an objectivity to it, and all of a sudden it doesn't bother you because you understand what it is. Or when one of your kids or a sibling says something selfish, you don't have to label what they are. You just say samsara. Now, the great benefit is yet you start to recognize all of these qualities are all one thing, that person's level of samsara. You start to really understand that none of us pick our afflictions. None of us pick the intensity of our afflictions, right? Subtle afflictions we can work with. Deep afflictions we're prisoners of, right? So you start to realize that with people aren't good or bad. At the deepest level, some people are sane and some people are insane at the deepest level. But It's just a question of their level of samsara. So when you're having problems with somebody, it just appears right in your mind. Wow, are they in a deep level of samsara? And you have compassion for them. But that understanding brings great objectivity. And for me, I can tolerate so much more when I understand the problem is samsara, not the person. It's like blaming somebody for sneezing. It's the cold. The person didn't try to sneeze on you, right? They could have covered their nose, but the same way here. It's samsara that's the problem. None of us chose samsara. None of us chose the unique afflictions that arise in our own case of samsara. Now, clearly, we have to hold people responsible for their behavior. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, we can understand and have compassion for the fact that they didn't choose it, that they're victims of samsara like everyone else, right? Dana?
What you're asking us to do, which I have found very helpful, and I hopefully am continuing to do it, and that is self-inquiry. And in doing my each evening, or when I review my day, the thing that it helps me when I've done that, and that is that then when I see other, I realize that, just as you were saying, that I had no until I really became to understand it and make some choices, I was like on autopilot, and that's just the way I was, and I didn't like it. And and from having that understanding, when I see somebody else, that I recognize that all I was trying to do, and I try to do still today, is to be happy. And that's all they're doing, even though that they can be very mean and stuff. They don't know how, as I didn't know how, to be happy in an appropriate way at times. And so that's what I always do, is I just think, well, they're just trying to be happy. They don't
And
know.
doesn't that also show you, when you mention that you were running on autopilot and you recognize that, you realize that's recognizing your awakening, right? Because to awaken is that introspection.
Yeah.
That awakening is to be able to watch yourself be unaware. That awakening is recognition that I haven't been aware. I haven't been awakened. I've been running on autopilot. That is the definition of awakening. So it's showing you that you're successful, your practice is doing well. And you're exactly right, Dana. And it's all about happiness. You ain't kidding. We're all trying to get it. And when we don't get it, though, sometimes, especially through trauma and things like that, it can become convoluted. And that's where mental illness comes in. And you have people that subconsciously, because they can't receive happiness, they decide that they're going to make everyone else as unhappy as they are, or they actually take joy in causing suffering in others. We call that mental illness in Buddhism, right? Well, that's the deepest of all samsaras. Yeah. Well, that's all I wanted to share with everybody. Is the practice clear to everyone? What level of clarity is it to you? Is it a 3 or a 4? Right? It's really, again, it's all about clarity. We can all nod our heads at Dharma class. Oh, yeah, I get it. But how much are we really getting it? And especially we want to have that direct experiential experience of it, right? So like in this practice, when something arises and you note it, samsara, that's a direct experience, right? You're experiencing it, you're feeling it, and then you're noting it, you're making that connection, and you're gaining a much, much deeper understanding of what it is. I see you, Mara. I see you, samsara. David?
Yeah, I really like Mara, because I find it's funny. If you spot you're doing something, you go, I see you, Mara, I see you. And it gives you a sense of humor about it. And of course, the actual angst and everything normally goes away at that point because you're laughing at it. You can actually see it. So I vote for Mara.
Monastics appreciate that. They use it very much for lust. When they feel lust come over, which is a samsaric quality, not love, but lust. They say, I see you, Mara, trying to tempt me. So you're free to use Mara as well, or samsara. So I want everybody to give it a try this week, and please join in our chat groups. Tell me how you're doing with it all. Hey, with that said, I'm gonna let's end today's teaching. How about events coming up? The only thing I could think of is that I'm leaving for LA first thing in the morning tomorrow to start SBT Los Angeles. Very exciting. I'm hoping it's going to be a whole new chapter for SBT. So with that said, let's end today's meditation with our altruistic affirmation, our teaching. May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well, may all be present, free of past regret and future worry. May all abide in constant appreciation, which is the source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Do you all see the samsara and awakening within that prayer? Yeah, it's quite amazing. Thanks everybody for coming. Remember that SBT was created for one purpose, to support you, you wonderful, wonderful practitioners. See everybody tomorrow for meditation. Oh, can I add one last thing? Our 1430 meditation, daily meditation, starting tomorrow is going to be moved to 1500, half hour later. And also we're starting up an old meditation time of 0300 hours. That's going to be a new daily meditation time. So come and join us. Those are all UTC times. You can read about that on the website. Bye, friends.
Safe travels, Tarpa.
Thank you.
Tarpa.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
too.
thanks.
Be safe.
Be safe, Tarpa.
Thank you. Thank you.